blade to show you here. Very grateful for that. So its unmounted point of balance is here. And you can see it's roughly 2/5 of total length from tang, roughly. And if you check for the node, it's actually in the upper part of the blade. And in the lower part you will have the node somewhere there. So here is where the nodes are right now. If I grasp the blade right behind where the guard will be, I have the forward pivot point right about there, and I have the aft pivot point right about there. So the two pivot points are close together, like this. Now let's mount a hilt on this one. Sorry for that. Time is always speeding when you're standing here. Haven't you noticed that? We only have half an hour left. Need to get my act together. So okay, now I added a small pommel on this one, and you can see that the point of balance has shifted dramatically, even with just 250 grams. So from being there, it is now here. That's the amount of movement of the point of balance. The forward pivot point used to be here. Now it is there. And the node that used to be here, but now it's moved into the grip, so it's here. The blade node used to be here, but now it's up here. So the blade node moved that much, while the upper node moved that much. No, that much. Now let's add some weight to this pommel. Plasticine, courtesy of Kevin Cashin. Thank you very much. Ask someone who works with pattern welded material and they will have plasticine. Now I've added a little bit more weight, but as you see it's plasticine, so it's not dramatically much. Now we have a pivot point right at the very point of the sword. So when I manipulate the forward end of the hilt, the point hovers in air. And that means, I'm not a swordsman, but when you use the sword in wards, the blade will tend to be focused on your opponent. However, when you use the aft hand in bringing around the sword in a cut, you will make use of the aft pivot point, which is roughly half the blade length. So you only have to manipulate half the blade length from the pommel, while the forward pivot point will keep you in control of its very point. So the placing of these pivot points are crucial in the handling characteristics of a sword. The pivot points also work in dampening shock. Sometimes it's said that has to do with vibration nodes, and they have a minimal effect on that. If you slap the blade, no, that's the node, sorry. The nodes have to do with stiffness. So outside a node, the blade is wobbly, but in the node, it's like a stiff flank. And of course the same is true for the hilt. You will have a wobblier sword outside the node and a stiffer one in the node. So if you have that node in the heel of your hand, that might be a good idea when you deliver a powerful blow. But the shock dampening has more to do with the pivot point, if you think about it, because if I strike here, the blade will just want to pivot around this point. It won't strike my hand, it will just pivot. Same thing here, it will just want to pivot. So that is what dampens shock. It will just pivot in your hand rather than hit you. And I think that has something to do with how the sword effectively bites. So when you combine what you know about the notes with the pivot points, sometimes you can find in a sword where you have notes and pivot points coinciding. They are two different things, but you can make them coincide. The pivot points move forward when you add mass, the notes move backwards, and at some time they will overlap, right? And I believe that's a shortcut, a recipe for effective sword. Okay, let's move on.